Before we get into today's story, drop your city in the comments below. It doesn't matter if you're watching from a small town in the Midwest or a high-rise in Manhattan. We want to know where you are. And if you haven't subscribed to Crimson Secrets yet, hit that button now. We post new stories every week, and you don't want to miss what's coming now. Let's talk about what happens when a man spends 22 years building an empire and forgets that the woman standing quietly beside him helped pour the foundation. The invitation arrived on a Tuesday, not by email, not through an assistant. It came in a cream-colored envelope, hand-delivered to the offices of Hargrove and Weld Consulting on the 14th floor of a building that Sylvester Hargrove had spent 11 years paying off. The envelope sat on his desk for most of the morning, unopened, because his name was not the one printed on the front. Mrs. Diana Hargrove, his secretary, Paulette, had placed it there without comment. Sylvester picked it up twice, set it down twice, and by noon had convinced himself it was nothing more than a charity gala invitation from one of Diana's old hospital board contacts. He was wrong about that. He was wrong about a lot of things that month. Diana Hargrove found the envelope when she stopped by the office at 2:30, something she did on Tuesdays. Because Tuesdays were the days she reviewed the quarterly filings for Hargrove and Weld, a task Sylvester had long since stopped pretending to understand. She was 46 years old, and she had the kind of stillness about her that some people mistook for passivity. Colleagues who had sat across from her in a negotiation knew better, but Sylvester hadn't been in a room watching her negotiate anything in a very long time. She opened the envelope at her husband's desk while he was on a call in the conference room down the hall. It was an invitation to the Alderton Foundation annual gala, a black tie dinner held every November at the Whitmore Hotel in downtown Philadelphia. The Alderton Foundation was not small. It funded hospital wings and university endowments and had more sitting board members with 7-figure net worths than most people would be comfortable counting. Diana had consulted for the foundation 12 years ago. She had not heard from them since. The handwritten note inside the envelope was from the foundation's founding trustee, a woman named Cecily Alderton, and it read simply, Diana, it's time. You'll understand when you arrive. C.A. Diana read it once. Then she folded it back into the envelope, slipped it into her bag, and went to pour herself a glass of water from the credenza by the window. She chose sparkling. She'd stood there looking out at the skyline for a long moment. Then she went back to the quarterly filings and said nothing about it to Sylvester when he returned. That was 3 weeks before the gala. What happened in those 3 weeks is the part that matters. To understand Diana Hargrove, you need to understand what she had been for the past 2 decades, not what she appeared to be, but what she actually was. She had met Sylvester when they were both 24, both finishing graduate programs, both broke in the way that people who come from good families are sometimes broke temporarily, and with a safety net nearby. Sylvester was finishing his MBA. Diana was finishing a dual degree in corporate law and financial forensics, a combination so specific, so deliberate, that her professors had asked her more than once what exactly she planned to do with it. Whatever needs doing, she had told them. What needed doing, it turned out, was Hargrove and Weld. The company had been Sylvester's idea, built on a model that Diana had spent 8 months stress testing before they took out a single loan. She had written the partnership agreements. She had structured the ownership in a way that protected both of them. She had identified the first 3 clients. She had also quietly established a blind trust in her own name during the company's 2nd year. Not out of distrust, she would say later, but out of habit. Financial forensics will do that to a person. You learn to build exits before you need them. By the time Hargrove and Weld was profitable, Diana had stepped back from the day-to-day operations. Sylvester ran the client relationships. Diana managed the structural finances, the kind of work that happened in spreadsheets and legal documents, invisible and essential. She also, on a consulting basis, continued working with 3 other firms whose names never appeared on any Hargrove letterhead. Sylvester knew about 2 of them. He did not know about the 3rd. The woman's name was Brooke. Sylvester had not introduced her to Diana. He had not introduced her to anyone in their social circle, which told Diana something about the level of calculation involved. Brooke was 31, worked in marketing for a pharmaceutical company, and had been seeing Sylvester for, as best Diana could reconstruct, somewhere between 14 and 18 months. Diana had found out 11 months ago. She had not said a word. That is the part people find hardest to believe when they hear this story. 11 months of knowing and nothing. No confrontation, no ultimatum, no tearful conversation over cold dinner. Just Diana, going about her days, reviewing her filings, attending her board calls, and waiting. Waiting for what, exactly? For the right moment. And the right moment, Diana had 22 years in financial consulting, rarely announces itself in advance. You have to build the conditions for it. You have to be patient enough to let everything come to a head on its own, in a setting of your choosing, in front of people. She had not planned the gala, but when the envelope arrived, she recognized what it was. It was the moment. The Whitmore Hotel had been built in 1923 and renovated twice since, most recently in 2019. It had a grand ballroom on the second floor, with 20-foot ceilings, a chandelier that had been imported from a dissolved estate in Vienna, and a staircase that curved down from the mezzanine in a way that architects still photographed for portfolio purposes. Diana arrived alone. Sylvester had told her 3 days before the gala that he would be attending a client dinner in Boston that evening, a dinner that, Diana noted, appeared nowhere in the shared calendar they had maintained for 19 years. She had nodded and said she hoped the dinner went well. Then she had called her tailor. She wore navy. Not the kind of navy that blends into a crowd, but a deep structural color, in a gown that had been made for her specifically, with a neckline that required confidence and a silhouette that required nothing else. She wore no jewelry except for a single bracelet on her left wrist. Platinum, thin as a wire, with a small diamond at the clasp. It had been a gift from her mother, and she wore it when she needed to feel grounded. Cecily Alderton met her at the entrance to the ballroom. Cecily was 73 years old, had founded the Alderton Foundation at 41 after her first husband's company had tried to push her out of a board seat, and had spent the 3 decades since accumulating the kind of quiet authority that money alone cannot buy. She was small, silver-haired, and had eyes that had seen enough boardroom maneuvering to recognize it in a hotel lobby at 50 feet. She took both of Diana's hands when she greeted her. "You look exactly the same," Cecily said. 12 years, Diana replied. "I know." Cecily's grip was firm. "I've been watching Hargrove and Weld for 3 of them. We need to talk before dinner." They talked. For 20 minutes in a small anteroom off the main corridor, the kind of room hotels maintain for conversations that cannot happen in public. By the time they returned to the ballroom, Diana's expression had not changed. Her posture had not changed. But something behind her eyes had settled into place, the way a lock clicks when the right key finally turns. She took her seat at table 7, she ordered sparkling water, and she waited. Sylvester arrived at 8:15. He was not alone. Brooke walked in, beside him, that had clearly been chosen to be noticed, and she was succeeding. She was attractive in a very specific way, the kind of attractive that requires effort and announces it. She laughed at something, Sylvester said, as they came through the entrance, and she touched his arm when she did it. And the gesture was so practiced, it was almost elegant. Sylvester saw Diana at table 7 approximately 4 seconds after entering the ballroom. The expression that crossed his face was not guilt. It was something closer to calculation, a rapid, visible assessment of variables and outcomes, the expression of a man deciding in real time how to handle a situation he had not anticipated. He had not anticipated it because he had told Diana he would be in Boston. He had not anticipated it because he had not received a gala invitation. He had not anticipated it because, for 11 months, Diana had given him no reason to believe she knew anything at all. He crossed the room toward her. Brooke followed, 2 steps behind. Her expression shifted now into something more careful. "Diana," he said her name like a statement of fact, which was Diana had always felt one of his less endearing qualities. "Sylvester." She looked up from the table. She did not stand. "I didn't know you'd be in town. Client canceled." He said it quickly, smoothly. "Last minute. I thought I'd come by and surprise you." "You've succeeded," Diana said. There was a pause. Brooke introduced herself. Brooke Callahan, she said, a friend of Sylvester's from a conference last spring. Diana shook her hand. She noted the way Brooke's grip was slightly too firm, the overcorrection of someone managing nerves. Lovely to meet you, Diana said, and meant none of it, and showed none of that. Sylvester pulled out the chair beside Diana and sat down, which was either bold or stupid, and Diana had long since decided it was the latter. Brooke was redirected by a Alderton Foundation coordinator, gently, efficiently, to a seat at table 12, which was across the room and had no sightline to table 7. Diana noted that the coordinator was one of Cecily's people. She noted it and said nothing. The dinner proceeded. It was, on the surface, a completely unremarkable evening. The Foundation's executive director gave a speech about hospital funding in underserved communities. A pediatric cardiologist accepted an award. The food was good, the wine was better. Sylvester, to his credit, maintained a performance of normalcy that Diana could objectively acknowledge as skilled. He made small talk with the couple to his left, laughed at the appropriate moments, refilled Diana's water glass, once, without being asked. She had always known, very good at surfaces. What he was not good at was patience, and by the time dessert arrived, the performance had begun to show its seams. "You look tired," he said to her, during a lull in the table conversation. It was not concern. It was an attempt to introduce the idea of leaving early. "I feel fine," Diana said. "It's been a long week." "It has," she agreed. "You're especially, I imagine, Boston to Philadelphia in one evening." He looked at her. She looked at the dessert menu. "Diana, the chocolate soufflé is supposed to be exceptional here," she said. "I read a review. I think I'll try it." The program for the evening included, near the end, a short segment that the Foundation called its legacy recognition, a moment where the founding trustee acknowledged individuals who had made significant, often contributions to the Foundation's work over the years. Cecily Alderton took the small podium at 9:45. She was brief. She thanked the usual people, the board, the donors, the staff who made each year possible. And then she said, "There is one person here tonight who has contributed to this foundation in ways that have never appeared on any program, any annual report, or any press release. That was by her choice, and we have respected it. But I think it's past time that changed." The room was quiet, in the way that rooms get quiet when something unscripted is about to happen. 12 years ago, when this foundation was facing a structural financial crisis that would have ended our hospital grant program, one consultant spent 4 months working without fee to restructure our endowment. She identified 2 board members who were redirecting funds, quietly, legally, but against the foundation. She built a legal framework that protected us going forward, and then walked away without asking for a single line of credit. Cecily paused. "Diana Hargrove. Would you stand, please?" Diana stood. The applause was immediate and genuine. She acknowledged it with a slight nod. Not modest, exactly, but contained. The expression of someone who knows the weight of what they're receiving and is choosing to carry it lightly. Sylvester, beside her, did not applaud for 3 full seconds, she noticed. She sat back down without looking at him. Cecily was not finished. "There's something else I want to acknowledge tonight, and I want to do it carefully because it involves a matter that is both personal and professional." She looked out at the room with the directness of a woman who had outlasted 3 board coups and a hostile takeover attempt. The Alderton Foundation has for the past 8 months been in quiet discussions with a private investment group regarding the expansion of our endowment. Those discussions concluded 2 weeks ago. I am pleased to announce that a significant capital contribution has been committed, enough to fund our hospital grant program for the next 15 years. A murmur of surprised pleasure moved through the room. "The contributing entity is the Whitfield Group," Cecily said. "Many of you will not recognize that name because it has operated largely outside public-facing channels for the past decade. It is, I can tell you, one of the most disciplined and principled investment vehicles I have encountered in 50 years of nonprofit work. And its principal, the person who built it, who has run it, who made this commitment possible, is someone who prefers to let her work speak for itself." She looked directly at table 7. "Diana Hargrove is the founder and managing director of the Whitfield Group. The room went very still, then it erupted. What happened next happened quickly, and Diana experienced it in the particular, slow motion way that people describe when they have been preparing for something for a long time, and it is, finally, actually occurring. Cecily left the podium. The applause continued. Across the room, at table 12, Diana could see Brooke's face, the careful social expression, dissolving into something raw and unmanaged, the face of a person recalculating in real time. Sylvester did not speak for a long time. When he did, his voice was low enough that only Diana could hear it. "The Whitfield Group," he said. "Yes, that's—" He stopped, started again. "I've heard of the Whitfield Group." "I know you have," Diana said. "You pitched them for a consulting contract in 2021. They declined." The pause that followed was the longest of the evening. "That was you." "That was me," she confirmed. She picked up her dessert fork. The soufflé had arrived while Cecily was speaking, and it was, in fact, exceptional. Sylvester's face went through several expressions, none of them ones he would have chosen if he'd known someone was watching. Diana was watching. She had been watching him for 22 years. "Diana, we need to talk." "We do," she agreed, "but not tonight." "Not tonight," he repeated it, like it was a foreign phrase. "There are 700 people in this room," she said pleasantly, "and 3 of them are journalists. I've been looking forward to this soufflé for 2 hours. We can talk tomorrow." She took a bite. It was perfect. The conversation she had told him to expect did not happen the next day. It happened the following Monday in the offices of her attorney, a woman named Patricia Dunmore, who had been practicing family and corporate law in Philadelphia for 30 years, and had the file already open when Sylvester arrived. Diana had retained Patricia 8 months ago. The paperwork had been prepared in stages, the kind of careful sequential legal architecture that Diana's background made possible and her nature made inevitable. The blind trust documentation, the asset structure, the separation of what was jointly held from what was not, the analysis of 11 months of corporate account activity showing in clean and undeniable detail that funds from Hargrove and Weld had been used, twice, to cover personal expenses associated with Sylvester's relationship with Brooke Callahan. That last part was not Diana's doing. That last part was Sylvester's. And that last part, Patricia explained gently, but without softness, was the part that changed the calculus of the dissolution entirely. Sylvester sat across the conference table, looking at the documents for a long time. He was not a stupid man. That was the thing about him that Diana had never been able to stop acknowledging. He was not stupid. He understood what he was looking at. He understood what it meant. "You've been planning this for 8 months, he said. "I've been protecting myself for 8 months, Diana said. "There's a difference, is there?" "Yes." She set down her copy of the asset summary. "Planning this would have required me to want it. I didn't want it, Sylvester. I want you to understand that. I did not want any of this." The silence that came after that was different from the silences earlier in the week. It had more weight, more honesty in it. "The Whitfield Group," he said again. He couldn't seem to stop returning to it. "I built it over 10 years, she said. "Separately, legally. Every cent of it is documented. Why didn't you tell me?" She looked at him for a moment. "The same reason you didn't tell me about Brooke," she said. "Because some things are not meant to be shared until they are. There is a particular kind of strength that doesn't announce itself. It doesn't walk into rooms loudly, or present credentials on demand, or feel the need to explain what it is. It simply exists, doing what needs to be done, quietly accumulating the kind of gravity that makes itself known, only when the moment finally arrives. Diana Hargrove spent 22 years being the kind of woman by people who weren't paying close attention. She spent 3 weeks being the woman who knew exactly what was coming and chose, still, to order the sparkling water and stay for dessert. In the months that followed, the dissolution of the Hargrove marriage was handled with the same efficiency that had characterized everything Diana had ever touched. The Whitfield Group completed its commitment to the Alderton Foundation. Hargrove and Weld was restructured, a process that revealed, for the first time on paper, exactly how much of its foundational architecture had been Diana's work, and exactly how much of its current liability belonged to decisions Sylvester had made alone. Cecily Alderton asked Diana to join the foundation board. Diana accepted. Brooke Callahan left her position at the pharmaceutical company 6 weeks later. The circumstances were not publicized. Sylvester, to his credit, did not contest the divorce. What he did do, and this is the part that people mention when they tell this story, is send Diana a letter, not an email. A letter, handwritten, delivered to her office on a Tuesday morning in February. It was 2 pages long, and Diana read all of it. She read it twice. She did not reply in writing, but the following week she called him, and they spoke for 40 minutes, and no one knows what was said in that conversation because Diana does not discuss it. And Sylvester, whatever his other qualities, has always been capable of knowing when a door has been closed. She kept the bracelet, the one from her mother. She wore it on a Thursday, in March, when she sat at the head of the Alderton Foundation's board table for the first time and called the meeting to order. The room was full of people who had spent the last 3 months learning her name. She had known most of theirs for years. She poured herself a glass of water, sparkling, from the carafe they'd set out for her, specifically, because someone on staff had noted the preference and attended to it. And she looked around the table, and she thought, this is what it feels like to be exactly where you are supposed to be. Not triumphant, not vindicated, just arrived. The meeting began. Diana Hargrove, managing director of the Whitfield Group, founding consultant to the Alderton Foundation, and 46 years old on a cold morning in March, opened the folder in front of her and got to work.